It has been like a roller coaster, a thrill a minute since the president took office a few weeks ago, and some good news from the Bulls and Bears Wall Street, something we talked about earlier. But now we get a chance to talk to a man who spent a lot of time in the nation's capital, former Congressman Jason Altmaier. So, Jason, saying he's going to scale back a little bit, and boy, the words were definitely heard on Wall Street. What do you make of the latest tariff news? And then we'll talk about so many other things, but let's begin there. Good evening.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, I think obviously scaling back on the tariffs is a good idea because I do not think that tariffs generally are a good idea, and I'm certainly not alone in that. But I think uncertainty in the market is a problem, too. The markets went up today because people are happy that he's backed off once again. I think this is the third or fourth time this has happened where he's threatened the tariffs and not gone through with it. But the market would do a lot better in the long run if he were just to propose a different economic policy and move away from the idea of tariffs altogether.
All right, so let's talk about all the things, the moving parts. Doge, of course, Elon Musk, the cuts, people feeling it here in the Commonwealth, even in the community I call home. I still think things have to be done. But how much of this do you actually think will stick? And just some thoughts of what we have witnessed in recent weeks. Go ahead, please.
I think it's better to take a step back if you're Doge or anyone who's looking at cuts within an agency and evaluate what exactly do these people do that I'm thinking about letting go, rather than just walking in as they did in the beginning and lay off half of a department and then determine later on, oh wait, these people really are important. They oversee the nuclear arsenal of the country, or they're researching the bird flu or Ebola, whatever it might be. So I do think that they've learned that lesson a little bit. They seem to be giving the agency heads more leeway, as they did at the Department of Education, for example, and making those determinations. And hopefully we'll get away from what we saw early on, which was just widespread, I believe, incompetence. And they had to go back and rehire people for jobs that were determined to be important after the fact.
So if he's able to save $1 trillion, which we'll have to wait and see if that can actually happen, the end of the fiscal year will be early fall, and he's saying he needs to do about $4 billion a year, meaning $4 billion a day, meaning Elon Musk, and all the backlash that Tesla is taking. There just seems to be too much noise for this thing to go as smooth that, well, the administration believes it has gone. I got to believe this has to change sooner than later, this thought process and what they've been doing.
Well, there has to be an actual accounting of what these cuts look like in the dollar amount. It's one thing for him to say we're going to cut $1 trillion, but on many of these examples, when you look at research grants and so forth, it's money that has either already been spent or programs that are no longer in existence that have been on the books. Things have been authorized by Congress years before, but were either never funded or the funding expired. So he's counting that as savings, but there's no real money there. So I think when we get to the end, somebody's got to take a look at this from an independent perspective and say how much really was saved.
I got to get back to the Department of Education. That's something that I think he could have waited to look at. It's kind of like any president early on in an administration. They go right to healthcare and education. But saying, I want to do away with or dismantle the Department of Education, even though a lot of people are still trying to figure out how they benefit teachers in school districts in Pennsylvania, I think that's a stretch, and I just can't see that going away as we know it. And I'm not so sure that should be on his radar this early.
Congress has to disband or eliminate the Department of Education. It's within their jurisdiction, so President Trump can't do that on his own, which is why he's talking about greatly scaling back and moving some programs out of the department. And most of the federal money that flows through the department flows through higher education. There is a great debate in the country about local control at the K through 12 level, and I think there's some merit to saying that the states and even the school boards, who are the people that are closest to those communities, closest to those students and parents, should have the authority to make decisions that's in the best interest of those individual school districts. But at the higher education level, over the past several years, candidly, there has been great mismanagement. The rollout of the student aid form, the application for student loans. They changed the system. It took them 3 years to roll it out. It was just riddled with glitches and errors, and there was a reporting requirement for universities across all sectors of higher education that had to be delayed 5 times and still hasn't taken effect because people were getting error messages and unable to upload data. So I do think that some efficiency and streamlining of the process was long overdue from that perspective.
Listen, one of your former employees during your time in Congress has become a bright light to this program and to our city. City Controller Rachel Heisler, we've talked many times, and I'll have her back here soon. What do these cities do that are in desperate need of cash flow? Something she has been talking about for a long time about how things have to change. What's your thoughts?
Well, different cities are in different places. A lot of these northeastern cities have been struggling. I know Pittsburgh's been losing population, and trying to find revenue from a decreasing population base is difficult to do. She's definitely the right person to do it. I know she's doing a great job. But the challenge is great in cities like Pittsburgh. And if you look at the Southeast, the Sun Belt and places in Arizona and Utah where they're growing, it's a lot easier because revenue's coming in, businesses are moving there. So different cities have different challenges, but I know Rachel will do a good job.
So let me ask you in closing, with all of the conversation, as good as it may be or bad as it may be, at least they have to be talking, Democrats and Republicans, about what's happening with the administration. Because I know my audience is talking. Every article I read, every story I look at, everyone's talking about what's going on. He has been the top story every day. Could this, in the long run, not just make our country better if it plays itself out and we actually do start saving money in this country and creating jobs and making money, but more importantly, something you've promoted and you've written about? Could maybe Democrats and Republicans actually start communicating more because of this lightning rod administration and actually maybe start working together more in the future? Or do you think this will divide them even further?
I think civic engagement is incredibly healthy, and it's good for the process. So the fact that either side, whether it be from the left or the right or moderates in the middle, are paying more attention, they're more civically engaged, that's a really good thing. And I hope that the Democrats, get out of this kind of shell-shocked position that they've been in for several months, unable to figure out what they want to do next, and decide which direction they want to go. And I hope that the Republicans will take a more critical look at the administration and things that are going on, and not just, whatever the president wants to do is going to be okay with us. And, having a critical eye to things like this is healthy for the process. So I would hope that at some point you would see more of that in the electorate, and the more people that vote, the better. And I think you'll see pretty engaged voting blocs, certainly from the left, in the next election. So we'll see what happens. But it is it's very disappointing to see the two sides just at such distance when it comes to communication and getting along, and there's just such anger and animosity in our politics right now, and I hope we're going to find a way out of that.
All right, former Congressman Jason Altmaier, always appreciate your time. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Rob.